Thanks for listening to West Indies on 99.94. I'm your host, Machel St. Patrick here from the Caribbean Cricket Podcast. And with me as ever is my partner in crime, Santokie Nagulendran. On today's show, we're going to be talking about Sunil Narine and Narine Russell. Will they ever play in the Maroon again? Santokie, take it away.
Well, yeah, Mash, you said it there. Will they ever play in the Maroon again? Now, these are probably the two most frequent questions we get from fans on social media. When is Narine Russell playing for West Indies again? When is Sunil Narine playing for West Indies again? Now, luckily for us, Desmond Haynes, lead selector of the West Indies men's senior side, and head coach Phil Simmons took part in a press conference on Tuesday, August the 9th. And obviously, these were questions asked by the media, local media, and they sort of addressed it. So we're going to dissect what was said at the press conference, but mainly looking at the cases of Narine Russell, Sunil Narine, and a few other players, and look at what their current status is in terms of playing for West Indies cricket again. So, Machel, I know you've got a list, because this was asked to Desmond Haynes and Phil Simmons, a list of players who are currently not playing for West Indies for various reasons.
Yeah, so if I give people, like as ever, we always like to give the kind of detailed context for people to understand. So in the most recent press conference, it was put to Desmond Haynes specifically about four players, in fact: Evan Lewis, Fabian Allen, Narine Russell, Sunil Narine. What was their status? And Desmond Haynes, lead selector, initial response was they're unavailable. So when I got my chance to put some questions to Des, I said, just for clarity, and I'm more was saying it around Dre, to be honest, because all the others were kind of explained. I said, just for clarity, what do we mean when we say unavailable? Because there's unavailable as in I am injured, I am unavailable, and there's unavailable as in I have not made myself available for selection. And Desmond clarified that, to the best of his knowledge, Narine Russell had not made himself available for selection. Earlier in the piece, he'd said that Evan Lewis had still failed to take the fitness test as required. And then later, another journalist inquired about Sunil Narine, and Desmond said, to the best of his knowledge, Sunil Narine has not contacted Cricket West Indies to make himself available for selection. And then between you and I, Santokie, we've written down 7 names, and there's possibly more, but we've written down 7 names who arguably would walk into the West Indies setup, certainly the squad, some say straight into the team, if they were available to play. And each one of them has a different reason. But I've got Sherfane Rutherford, Sunil Narine, Narine Russell, Evan Lewis, Fabian Allen, Sheldon Cottrell, who I should point out is injured at the moment, and Ruston Chase, who I should also point out is injured at the moment. Fabian Allen has a personal reason. So if we just take the first 4 for argument's sake, Santokie, Rutherford, Narine, Dre, and Evan. We spoke, I think it was in episode 2, when we were looking at the ODI woes, or possibly like the first official episode, that West Indies can't afford to play without their best players. I've just named 7 names who it looks like we ain't seeing any time in 2022, I should say. But focusing specifically on Dre and Narine, and I think we should throw Rutherford in there. What do we do, Santokie? And I put this to you because I think you are better versed than me on the complexities of the franchise game. You've long said to me about where the state of the game is going, and I am not going to be that guy who's going to say these guys should have some national pride, and because West Indies ain't the national team, these guys should have some national pride and they should make themselves available for West Indies, and because the franchise game is a franchise game. But where do we go from here, Santokie? Because to all intents and purposes, certainly in terms of Dre and Narine, that's it now, isn't it? They're done. They're done with the West Indies.
Whew, well, yeah, we're talking about 2 of the GOATs of the game, Narine Russell, Sunil Narine. Now, in that press conference, it was quoted in articles that Sunil Narine had said he'd like to come back to West Indies. Luckily for listeners on 99.94, that interview was done by myself. So for those of you who haven't checked it out on ESPN Cricket Monthly, I've done an in-depth interview with Sunil Narine, mainly focusing on sort of T20 and playing for Kolkata, but there was a lot about West Indies. And I think two things which are worth pointing out is one, he talked about loving playing Test cricket and just the mental ability and how it's developed his game and how he always felt it was a shame that his Test career was cut short after 6 Tests. Now, a lot of people might be cynical and say, oh, he was just saying that for PR reasons. But the line of conversation wasn't going that route. He brought it up because it was something that was on his mind. And from my perspective, I genuinely felt like he genuinely did miss Test cricket because it was a challenge. He made his name coming into first-class cricket as a youngster. And then secondly, he when asked about whether he will play for West Indies because fans are demanding it, he said there's a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff going on, but he would love to. Now, that was a very cryptic answer. We don't know what the behind-the-scenes issues are. Some people might allude to it. Some people might have suggestions. But the fact he hasn't definitively said no means I don't think we can ever possibly rule it out, even though it's unlikely. So the fact he's gone on record and said he doesn't see it as a no for West Indies, he could come back, means that potentially we could see him come back. But he's 30, what is he now, 34 years old. He's missed the last 2 T20 World Cups. I don't think he's played the ODI World Cup. So you're looking at him, Mash, and if he doesn't play at this World Cup, I mean, there's a chance we could see him do a final hurrah at home in the next T20 World Cup in the Caribbean, maybe. Potentially. But I just think, as you've mentioned, franchise cricket, he's played since 2012 for Kolkata Knight Riders. He's beloved by fans, players, an iconic player, probably the all-time greatest player they've had and one of the greats in the IPL. Just that sort of recognition, the money financially, and just that sort of team integration. When we've seen the West Indies cricket team has been divided, a lot of issues, also issues with his action. There's been a lot of factors. So whilst I wouldn't definitively say no, Mash, would you agree and say it seems from your perspective unlikely that we'll see Sunil Narine and Maroon again?
Listen, you threw a spanner in the works there by mentioning the 2024 World Cup, because actually, do you know what? That hadn't crossed my mind, that if they wanted to, Dre and Narine do a last dance, that's the perfect time to do the last dance, right? But you would have said that when the band got back together in 2021 for the World Cup last year, that should have been a quote unquote last dance for Sunil them. Now, obviously, it's since come out that I believe some last gasp attempts were made to try and get Sunil to come to the World Cup. Did Sunil say yes? Some people said he said yes, but then there were some issues. Again, this is all conjecture here because we don't know the in-depth full story, but we definitely know for certain that Sunil was approached at the last minute to make himself available for that World Cup, but we don't technically know what went on with regards to, did he have to do a fitness thing, or was it about this, that, or the other? But we know he was definitely approached at the last minute to come to the World Cup last year. So like you, Santokie, I wouldn't say 100% no. And at the end of the day, what? Ravi Rampal played last year's World Cup at 37. Chris Gale played last year's World Cup at 41. Lendl Simmons was 36. So as much as we're saying, oh, Sunil's 34, that's not actually an impediment to him playing. Andre Russell is 34. That's not an impediment to him playing. Both of them could easily play. Granted, there'd be questions, but they could both easily play at 36 in a home World Cup. And I'd like to believe that Sunil Narine, primarily as an economical spinner, would still be useful in a context of T20s at the 8. Maybe he'd be a bit of a liability in the field, but he'd still be useful in the context of what he gives to the team at the age of 36 in a home World Cup. Would Andre Russell still be useful at 36? Would he still be a top-tier all-rounder? Very unlikely. Would he still be an explosive batter? Probably. At the age of 36. So we shouldn't say no. But what we should say, Santokie, and what deserves to be asked is, and let's put it on Dre. Dre's playing, well, both of them are in the 100 right now, obviously. So Sunil's at Oval Invincibles, Dre's at Manchester Original. So both are in London. Sorry, in the UK. And what we should do is we should probably go and find them both. But Dre's one perplexes me a bit more, because you at least have spoken to Sunil in the last few months, and Sunil has at least suggested he'd like to still feature one day. So we can't really stick it on Sunil and go, he don't want to play for West Indies and da 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 da. Because at the end of the day, he said in a print interview with you know what? The door's never closed on West Indies. So there's the hope. To the best of my knowledge, Santokie, Dre's not put anything in print. Since the last World Cup, Dre's just ducked out. We ain't heard from Dre. Dre's not gone on social media. He's not, and I'm not saying he must. I'm just saying he's not said anything. No one's put anything to Dre. So we don't have anything where we can say Dre's ducked out of West Indies duty now. He doesn't care. But the problem is, in that press conference, Desmond Haynes' response was, to the best of my knowledge, Dre has not made himself available for selection. Now, here's the question. I always put this question to you, Santokie, and let's throw Shafane Rutherford in it as well. So Shafane Rutherford's going to be playing for St. Kitts, as will Evan Lewis. Dre has made the move to the superpower Trinbago. What happens, Santokie, if Dre, Evan, Shafane Rutherford, Sunil Narine at Trinbago as well? Let's just focus on those four. What happens if they put in fantastic performances in the CPL, Santokie? Don't we technically have to... Phil Simmons said in the press conference he's not begging anyone anymore to play for West Indies, but don't we have to beg them, Santokie? If they put in a magnificent CPL, don't we have to beg them to come play in the World Cup?
I actually think Dre Russell will play at the World Cup in Australia.
Interesting. Talk me through it.
I've always said, I mean, Dre Russell, obviously, he hasn't played in bilaterals. But from my point of view, I mean, Evan Lewis is different. We know there's obviously issues behind the scene. There's been a bit of bad talking from both parties about each other. So there's obviously an issue there. Dre Russ, there's never been, as far as I'm aware, no one's ever publicly spoken about an issue. He's passed all the fitness tests. But for me, I don't think you can question, I mean, in terms of bilaterals, some would say he should be playing at least 1 or 2 series. But if you look at the state of his body and he's not getting better, it's sort of like that. But in terms of actual tournaments, his commitment, he pulled himself up to play the 2019 ODI World Cup when all evidence suggested, why are you doing this? Like, your body can't take it. And he's played in the T20 World Cups, both of them, in the most recent ones. He played, obviously, last year in UAE in the World Cup. I think Andre Russell's available for the World Cup. There's nothing to suggest that he's not available for the World Cup. He's just not playing bilaterals, basically. I think maybe there's been some sort of agreement where he said he'll play in the World Cup, and that's it. They're just based it on that. He's the fact he's Dre Russ, playing the CPL, get some momentum, we'll pick you for the World Cup. And I think it was very telling in the press conference with Haynes and Simmons. They said the players in the squad for the New Zealand series and India series won't necessarily be the side that goes to the World Cup. Now, if you look at the squads in against India and New Zealand, it's pretty much the best of the best in the region, other than those who are unavailable. So if you're saying this isn't the final squad or there's going to be additions, you're hinting that other players will be coming back into the fold. And I think they worded that very carefully, specifically because on that list, Andre Russell's going to be the guy who's going to come to the World Cup. I think Sunil Narine, he hasn't played for West Indies in 3 years. It's unlikely he'll play at the World Cup. Evan Lewis, there's bad blood between both parties. I don't think that will get resolved before the World Cup. Shafane Rutherford, I think he's given up on West Indies. I think in that list, Andre Russell's going to be the trump card that comes through for the World Cup after being successful for the Trinbago Knight Riders. I just think there's not been enough to suggest he's cut ties with West Indies. Like you said, he hasn't said anything. Selectors haven't said anything other than he's unavailable at the moment. His history of playing in tournaments suggests he is committed. So I think we'll see him at the World Cup.
For Santokie, and I want to believe you. You know how excited you're going to make people now. you just gassed up the situation. But Santokie, enough people now. Watch what's going to happen. The team at 99.94 are going to clip that from you, put that all over the internet. Next thing you know, now next press conference, you're going to hear people say, as the door being shut on Andre Russell. But here's my thing, Santokie. We have played since that last World Cup. We have played, I'm just counting it now, 8, 10, 13, 18. We've played 21 T20s. By the time we finished the 3 versus New Zealand, we would have played 21 international T20s. Andre Russell has featured in none. He's been in 0 squads. I'm actually in agreement with you. If Dre produces a magnificent, let's say he's in the top 5 scorers in CPL and he goes under 8 with the ball in his overs, right? I don't think we are in any position to turn that down. as a team, not when your alternatives are Dean Smith, Chemo, Paul, Romario, Shepard, okay, let's take Jason out of it. Let's just say those three: Dean, Romario, Chemo, and then you have Dre pulling something mad off in CPL, right? But what I will say, and it's similar to the fitness test argument, is it right that a player should be allowed to basically never feature in bilaterals, produce and in fairness, you're right, because I actually should point out what you said. Desmond Haynes' exact point about CPL, which I didn't write in our write-up on our Twitter handle, was he said CPL is our flagship tournament in the Caribbean. Of course, performances in CPL will matter with regards to selection. So I think you're right to say, well, Des is kind of saying no one come for us if we make some last-minute options and changes in our squad. But I'm just saying to you, should it be right that you can miss bilaterals for the whole year from World Cup to World Cup and then just get in?
Yeah, well, I'm gonna throw this out there. Trent Bolt hasn't played a T20I in 2022. He hasn't played since the last T20 World Cup. He's ripped up his contract, New Zealand Central contract. Obviously, he is playing against West Indies in these upcoming T20s. But interestingly enough, the head coach said yesterday of New Zealand, I think Gary said, Trent Bolt will be going to the World Cup. He'll be playing at the World Cup, even though he hasn't reached that. Now, the problem is, New Zealand is obviously seen as Trent Bolt is New Zealand's seen as a favourable administration. People like them, so people will see this as an admirable, forward-thinking move. The problem is with West Indies when we do this. Oh, he's a mercenary. It's the cuss-out season. So for me, I don't see much difference between what Jay Russ is doing and what Trent Bolt's doing. He's managing his workload. He's showing up for the big tournaments. I mean, he's still playing cricket. It's not as if he's just sitting at home. He's playing in 100, like you said. So he's getting cricket in, but he's doing it from a financial point of view. He needs to make the money while he can. He's playing cricket. We know what he's capable of. I don't see why you turn him down for a big tournament. It's workload management, which falls in line with players and the modern game. The amount of franchise tournaments coming through. Players have to think about the money coming through and manage their workload based on that. Now, are you going to turn down Jay Russ because he hasn't played in a 4-1 job in against India? Are you going to turn him down based on that? Or what are you going to turn him down based on? If he's playing cricket and we know he's Jay Russ and he's available for the World Cup, you take him. And I think that's what Desmond Haynes and Phil Simmons know. But because of the cuss-out, they're never going to say Jay Russ is potentially coming back for the World Cup. We'll just have to wait to the last minute and he'll get added to the squad.
Listen, this is explosive, you know. This is explosive because
I don't see. There's nothing I've said that anyone has ever said from Jay Russ or West Indies to say Jay Russ is outcast from West. Evan Lewis, he's not taking a fitness test. You didn't think, okay, he's not going to play the World Cup then because he's not doing anything. They've never said Andre Russell's turned them down or not communicate. Sunil Narine, he hasn't communicated with Cricket West Indies. They've not said that about Jay Russ. For all we know, Jay Russ has told them, listen, I'm going to play these tournaments. I've got a few years left in cricket. I'm going to get the bag. But I'm here for the World Cup when you need me. I'm there in Australia. Nobody's ever said anything. If you look at all the rhetoric coming through from press conferences and selectors and head coaches, they've never said anything about Jay Russ.
But is that because no one's been asking anything?
If he hadn't reached out, they'd give us Sunil Narine, oh, he hasn't been in contact with West Indies. He obviously has. And they're obviously happy with what he's saying because they've not said the door's shut on him. They've not said he's refused to take a fitness test. They've not given any reason. So what's going on? Unless there's a reason they're not disclosing, which would be strange because they've disclosed the reasons for every other player. So they've not said it's personal reasons.
Yeah, but they said he's unavailable for selection.
Yeah, which is now, like as of now, bilaterals. He's unavailable. That's it.
So you're saying that all that means is once he's available, he's in.
He's in, yeah. I think.
But then even though I agree with you, Santokie, and you have to remember, ultimately I agree with you, but we have to remember there will be people who will listen to this, particularly in the Caribbean, and be like, no, he can't just walk into the side. But here's my thing: if we do that with Dre, right? Hear me out. What's to stop a Shimron Hetmyer? Let's take Shimron because he's the most likely given given how much he's in around the region. Yeah. What's to stop a Shimron Hetmyer looking at Dre Russ and say, well, hold on a minute. My man doesn't have to play bilaterals between World Cups, produces in CPL, gets into World Cup squad. What's to stop Shimron Hetmyer saying, you know what, I'm ducking out of bilaterals after the World Cup. You man will see me again in 2024 for the home World Cup when I make myself available off the back of CPL. what's to stop? Or before you answer that, so first question, what's to stop Shimron or someone like Shimron doing that? Obviously, Nicholas can't because he's captain. So what's to stop Shimron doing that? And two, based on the modern dynamics of the franchise market and free agency, is that just how the game's going now, that you just have to adapt to that? That's the game. The game is the game.
Yeah, I think that I exactly, you hit the nail on the head. I think the game is the game. I think with the amount of franchise tournaments popping up, we've got the UAE one, the South Africa one. There's going to pretty much every month there's going to be a franchise tournament. Do we hold back players from making money and also playing at a higher level than bilaterals by making them play bilaterals for the sake of it? Or do we adapt and say, okay, if you're playing franchise cricket but you're happy to show up for tournaments, then come along. It depends on how kind of the thinking is. But I think Hetmeyer, he would have to look at it as if he's not a consistent performer. So for me, you just lay out straight. Jay Russ is a performer consistently, IPL, CPL, top level franchise player. Is Hetmeyer at that level? Does he deserve that sort of treatment? So it depends on sort of how you discuss it. Obviously, there's two sides to the coin. You can say, all right, we're holding Dre Russ to these standards and not everyone else. Why is he getting special favour? But it's Dre Russ. He's one of the greatest of all times in the format. We've seen AB de Villiers, for instance, try and come back to the South Africa or be called up last minute for the South Africa T20 side before World Cup because of his legacy. I think you have to make adjustments for a certain group of players who have that legacy, because at the end of the day, you're in a World Cup to win it. No matter whose feelings you hurt, you pick the best side that's available to you. So for me, West Indies to turn down Dre Russ if he makes himself available for the World Cup would be foolish on our part, because he's Dre Russ, one of the greatest of all time to do it.
That's a compelling argument, a very compelling argument.
I just think, like I said, other nations can do, like AB de Villiers called up last minute to play in the World Cup. I think whatever, there were issues and he didn't end up playing. New Zealand, they've done it with Trent Bolt. I think when other nations do it, we look up to it as forward thinking. When West Indies do it, we see it as, they're stupid, they're foolish, they're letting the mercenaries walk over, like how they're taking liberties, players are taking liberties. I just think we need to just think of it as Dre Russ is available. We pick him for the World Cup. Bang, that's it. We go from there. We can't deep it and think like we said on our previous episodes. We haven't got the talent pool to be turning down these players. What right do we have to be turning down Dre Russ if he's not available? Because he hasn't played with Shamar Brooks against India.
So I guess just to come and bring that to an end, then, just to clarify, based on your argument.
Yeah.
You do it for a Dre Russ, you do it for a Sunil.
Yeah.
What about the people under that tier then? A Fabian Allen, a Sherfane Rutherford. Let's say St. Kitts and Nevis Patriots win CPL again, yeah? Oh no, Fabian's gone to Taloirs now. But let's say St. Kitts and Nevis win CPL and Rutherford has another fantastic tournament. We know there's issues with Rutherford and fitness. Based on your argument about talent pool, what, do we make the same exception for someone like Rutherford, who we know hasn't done fitness tests?
So this is interesting because I think they've obviously placed, Phil Simmons and Desmond Haynes have placed emphasis on CPL as almost being like a feeder into that World Cup. So whoever performs in that, they're getting into the West Indies squad. So I think they'll just use CPL because it's affiliated with West Indies cricket. It's not like it's a remote franchise tournament somewhere across the world. It's affiliated with Caribbean cricket. I think, if Sherfane Rutherford's top scorer for St. Kitts and Patriots and he does a fitness test on that, you put him into the squad.
The thing is, I want to disagree with you, but at the end of the day, I think you've raised ultimately. I know we're going to get cussed out for this episode. So Santokie's the person to blame people if you're coming with the cuss out. But fundamentally, I'm agreeing with Santokie, because at the end of the day, we can't have our cake and eat it. You can't have people on one hand saying the T20 side's useless, India are trouncing us, we're no good, and then yet still we got about 3 to 4, possibly 5 players. So let's say Rutherford, Narine, Russell, Lewis, Fabian on the outside looking in. And then on one hand, we're saying to them, nah, but you can't come in because you never play for us when we want you to play for us, and fitness test, this, that, and the other. Those 5 players, arguably, maybe not a Rutherford, but those 5 players arguably walk into a lot of other squads around the world. Forget if they're in the 11, they walk into a lot of other squads around the world. I ultimately have to come in the line with you to say, how can we afford to not even put them in a squad? Yeah. Forget if they're going to play, just put them in a squad.
I think as well, obviously we talked about the short-termism of like West Indies fandom. I think obviously a lot of players will cost. But at the same time, players will cost. If we go to the World Cup and we open again with Jason Holder and Shamar Brooks and we're tapping 30 off 8 overs at the beginning, people will cost. And it'll be even worse because we'll have Fabian Allen, Evan Lewis, Andre Russell sitting at home when we know they could have been playing. So for me, I think you have to ignore the cuss-outs if you're a selector or coach and just basically go, how can you get your best squad in line for a World Cup? Regardless of what avenues they take, if they're playing and they're fit, how can you get them into that 11 and try and win the World Cup, which is your ultimate aim? At the end of the day, Phil Simmons' job, his remit will be to try and win the World Cup. He's got to do what he can, maximize the resources. You can't think, oh, no, the fans are going to cuss out if Andre Russell walks in the team. You pick the best squad that's available to you. So World Cups have no time for emotions.
So I'm going to end with this then, Santokie, because we have to put some balance on it. Phil Simmons did also say in that press conference, I'm not begging anyone to play for the West Indies. He didn't call names. I'm sure we can assume who or what he might have been talking about. But he said it twice. I'm not begging anyone to play for the West Indies. You should want to play for the West Indies. So I just want, in the interest of balance, to say the onus is on the players to make themselves available. Because if a Dre, if a Sunil, if an Evan, a Rutherford, for example, say, we are willing and available to play for the West Indies during the World Cup. If I was them, I'd put it out in the public. We are willing and available to play for West Indies in the World Cup. Then at least the fan base then looks at the selectors and says, well, boy, they say they want to play. What you going to do now? But I do think, Santokie, let's end on this point and see what your response is to this. I do think Phil is right, though, to say I'm not begging anyone anymore. So there is a bit of a balance in this, in so much as some of them clearly aren't meeting us halfway.
Yeah, 100%. I think you shouldn't beg anyone to play for your country, essentially. I agree with that. You're not going to beg anyone to play for the side. But that's why I deduced that Andre Russell will make the World Cup, because you can analyze it. Evan Lewis isn't taking a fitness test. Okay, we're not begging him to come into the side. He's not doing a fitness test. Sunil Narine hasn't reached out to Cricket West Indies. Okay, we're not begging him to come to the side then. They've not said anything about Dre Ross. They've not said he's refused or anything like that. That's why I think of that list, there's questions over everyone else. I think Andre Russell will go to the World Cup because I don't think he's made himself unavailable, and I don't think they've had to beg him. I think he'll be in the side for the World Cup. Other players you can deduce, like I said, Evan Lewis, Sunil Narine, that they're not willing to beg for these players, and nor should they have to beg for them to play for the colours of West Indies. But with Andre Russell, I think it's a different case. I think he'll be in the side for the World Cup.
People? Santokie said that line. Not me.
Usually, confidence as well,
that's what I say. With full chest, Santokie said that line. Normally, it's me who's getting the clips and people trying to come for me afterwards. But people, you know who you need to come for after that full chest statement that Santokie just made. But Santokie, that's been another edition of West Indies on 99.94. It's goodbye from me. Is it goodbye from you?
Yeah, I'm going to have to delete my social media accounts after this because the cuss out will be mad. But yeah, I'll say it once again with Chester. Andre Russell will be at the World Cup in Australia, man. You heard it here first. And guys, that's been all. Hope you've enjoyed listening to this episode, and we'll catch you soon.
You know, as ever, people, find us on Twitter and Instagram at Carib Cricket. Email us if you want to, caribcricket@gmail.com. But for now, we're out. Remember, stay locked.